let's get into some things that I wanted to talk about. Number one, I know this was on just about everybody's radar, is Chris Cuomo, who has been on a bit of a rehabilitation tour, trying to repair his tarnished image. And
I still have to think through, is that what he's really trying to do? I think he's just a guy who was caught up in the corporate atmosphere. You work for a company, you have to toe the line or you have to leave. And that's not to make any excuse for his horrific pandemic takes, but I don't know if he's just showing you who he is. I don't think what we saw on CNN was really Chris Cuomo. So I think Dave Smith would say, okay, however you want to present it, it's a redemption tour.
This included working out a deal with Patrick Bet-David, where he's doing some shows for Valuetainment, and it also included a sit down with Tucker Carlson. I will say for the record, and I say this as somebody who I'm friends with both Tucker and Pat, and I have enormous respect for both of them. And so I say this with nothing but love for those two men, that I hate that they're doing it. I told Tucker as much. I haven't told Pat that yet, but I'll tell him now. I hate that they're allowing this. I hate that they're being kind to him. It drives me crazy. If there's one in this world, right? Like all the podcasters or all the internet shows, if there's one thing we all have in common, right? Like Pat and Tucker and Joe Rogan and like almost all of the other ones that you could name, like all the big internet shows. One of the things we all have in common is we all fucking hate the COVID regime. All of us. There might be other issues where we kind of differ. Not everybody was great. Well, of the group I met, probably they all were great on Ukraine. Maybe
I've moved on from the pandemic regime to the country 7,000 miles away. That's my focus right now, and then the blacks a little bit too. But so I'm not in the same place, and maybe that's why I slightly disagree with Dave Smith here. Believe it or not, I do slightly disagree on the Chris Cuomo thing. I think it's good to bring him in the fold. I completely agree. You haven't done the acquiescing that we need to see from you, Christopher Cuomo. There's a lot of stuff that went down during the pandemic, but he's open to debating. Or it's not. I like how Patrick Bet-David said it's going to be a sit down. I like that better. Yeah, he's open to the sit down.
Maybe not everyone's great on Israel. Maybe everyone's not, good on every single issue. But if there's one thing that unified all of us, we were against the COVID restrictions.
It's a great take. I mean, you're right. Everybody's not right about certain other issues, but damn near everyone in this space. And I don't even include Daily Wire. Shapiro was obviously wrong during the pandemic. But Candace Owens was on there. She was right. I forget where Matt Walsh was. I think Matt Walsh was right the whole time. But he's right. That's one unifying thing. But he's not bringing Chris on to spew that stuff. That's what I would be upset about. Like, wait a second. Not even that, if you let Chris on to spew pandemic propaganda, but you didn't check him. But that's not what's happening.
We were against the insane because it was so insane. It was. We're going to lock down the.
It's hard not to talk about it without reliving it. It's really hard.
Country and censor anybody who thinks we shouldn't lock down the country.
Effing insane. It's just, I can't believe it happened.
We're all against that. And Chris Cuomo isn't just like some guy who kind of went along with it. He was like the guy in the corporate press who championed the whole thing. He was the absolute worst on it the whole time. It's as if all of like the internet shows, if our unifying thing was being against the war in Iraq, and then like Dick Cheney is coming to do the circuit. Like, by the way, I mean, maybe Dick Cheney is not the example, but like Bill O'Reilly, whoever the number one guy in news who was championing it was. And like, I wouldn't even be against it if he was coming around and just like profusely apologizing.
Yeah, he should be a little bit more humble. I haven't seen that. I think he will have to be during this sit down, which will turn into a debate, especially if he's not humble. This is going to be that Bill Burr line when he was hosting SNL. He said something about white women or take this talking to, but take this talking to. Chris Cuomo, you're going to have to take this talking to from Dave Smith. Anything else? I'm not even against you right now. But if you go and have this conversation with comic Dave Smith and you start to act ornery, we're going to have problems. And same with you, Patrick Bet David. I don't know how you're going to get out of that one. He's going to talk about it in a little bit, but I kind of know where Chris Cuomo's going to go with it in the debate. We all know. If you listen to debates, you already know where Chris is going to go. I'll let you know in a second.
Like if he was coming around and just being like, I'm so sorry, I got this so wrong. I demonized all of you when I was the one who deserved to be demonized or something like that. Like, okay, if I believed it was heartfelt enough, like maybe I could but he's not even doing that. He's just like moving over here and almost like pretending like, yeah, some things were said, some stuff was done. And then we're supposed to forget that you had nightly interviews with your brother, giving him puff pieces as he was locking down his country and sending COVID positive patients into nursing homes. I'm supposed to like forget about that. I'm supposed to forget that
in another life. I can't believe this was me. I thought that Andrew Cuomo's pressers, he had those daily press conferences. I even said he was going to have a chance at president. Not that I wanted him to, but he was being presidential. I thought he did the PowerPoint. He's very kind of, he has that Italian style to him, very, leadership, but then it comes across as he knows when to joke a little bit and when to be serious. I thought they were great. I remember talking to other parents in the area, my mother-in-law saying like, yeah, Andrew Cuomo, are you watching? Believe it or not. And then slowly over time, figuring out, some ain't right. Yeah. And learning like, wait, something's really, really wrong.
Faked a reemergence from your basement after you had COVID and filmed it and pretended it was the first time you had been out of your basement when we had video of you outside almost getting in fights with people. You know what I mean? Like what? No, I'm not just letting that go. Anyway, the latest in this
before we do that, let's go back to that basement incident. We haven't relived that in a while. Chris Cuomo's basement incident occurred in April 2020. Cuomo, a CNN anchor, announced on March 31st, 2020, that he had tested positive for that COOF and would be quarantining in his basement. On April 20th, so a month later, Cuomo emerged from his basement in a televised segment, claiming it was his first time leaving the basement since his diagnosis. However, it was later revealed that Cuomo had been seen outside his home earlier in mid-April, raising questions about the authenticity of the televised basement emergence. So there's only one way you can do this debate. There's only one way for Chris Cuomo, and it's to be humble. It's going to be it's going to be almost like when you're younger and you were acting bad, and it was the 90s, it wasn't 2000, and a parent got that belt, and you're going to have to just take that belt and just don't laugh, don't cry, just take it and it'll be over quickly. And I think that's Dave, bring the belt. He's going to bring the belt, the verbal belt. And Chris Cuomo, just bend over.
Middle MAGA.